starring Lee and Will Smith start filming Gemini Man. Will Smith has revealed on his Instagram that filming has started for the Paramount Pictures and Scott's movie Gemini Man, coming to theaters on October 4, 2019. Gemini Man is an innovative action thriller starring Will Smith as Henry Brogan, an elite assassin, who is suddenly targeted and pursued by a mysterious young operative that seemingly can predict his every move. The film is directed by Academy Award-winning filmmaker Ang Lee and produced by renowned producers Jerry Bruckheimer and David Allison. Also starring are Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Clive Owen and Benedict Wong. Are you looking forward to seeing Gemini Man? Let us know in the comments below.
Good afternoon.
My name is Helen Laxton, and I will be your mistress of ceremony today. I will open with a poem, Around the Table. Around the table, faces glow with expectation. I remember a space where I sat so many times, yet each and every face reminds me of myself. At different times, rhymes, and seasons, fantastically swept amongst the energy, allowing myself to bask, yet remain in my own identity. About face, so many hues of brown, electricity, illuminating my current situation, lighting the already burning flame of the kindled joy that cannot be put asunder. In my silence, I sit and wonder, how could I, so small, rebellious and peculiar, be a part of such a brilliant and grand legacy? Ancestors whisper to me, southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves, blood at the root. And at that root, my great-great-grandmother gave birth to a daughter that breathed the dream of educating the masses. Now within me, it drips like molasses, a thickening that gets me through every situation. I slather it on my hoe cakes as I sit around the table. Thank you. I would like to welcome you all to our Gumbo Pot Educational Symposium. As I said, I am H.R. Latson, or Helen Latson, and I will be your mistress of ceremony. Today, since we are at the Gumbo Pot, I want us to all think about why did we choose the name Gumbo. We all have different seasonings, different things that we can bring to the table, different ingredients that we can form to come together and bring awareness not only to our inner circles, but to the world abroad. So today, it is my extreme pleasure to be your mistress of ceremony. Right now, we are preparing ourselves for the occasion, the life and legacy of TUNIS Campbell by Bishop James H. Brooks. Please give him a round of applause.
First of all, we want to thank you all for coming so far and near to help us celebrate this great occasion. We want to thank most of our Parish and his wife Sonia for allowing us to come here to the hen house to put on this. We have worked tireless day and night to try to get this going, in which we had a lot of fight against the city here in Glenville. They tried to stop it. We didn't care. We're going to go on in the house because we have that right. We're going in the federal court. They tried to stop us. And so we're here today to celebrate today and to get acquainted with each other, you know, and just share the good things about the state of Georgia and what's going on, because we have a great election coming on. We have one of the most dynamic young ladies running for governor. We want to make sure we get that, amen, get that word out. But I think the occasion for the TUNIS Campbell should be coming from the founder and the president of the TUNIS Campbell at 10 o'clock, none other than the founder himself, the Reverend Zach Lyne.
All right.
I've been in many churches. In every church I've gone into, the bishop gets up, the preacher get up, the choir sing, Negroes clap and dance and pant. Get your hands up and act like I'm somebody. Now this ain't about me.
All right.
This is about bringing folk to a particular point of commitment that we feel has been lost and left in the dark since we got freedom through the so-called civil rights movement. Breaks my heart to say it, but we didn't. As the founder of the Tunis Campbell Septima Clark Freedom School, we decided today that we would come into a small village called Glennville, Georgia. It's at the crossroad of hatred. It's at the place where chickens and pecans come, but there's prisons here. We invited our aspiring lady to be governor, to be our governor of the state of Georgia, the slickest, most powerful, racist institution, bar none, in the United States of America.
Amen.
There was a man in Alabama by the name of, what was that boy name that said segregation to die?
Wallace.
George Wallace.
Segregation to mouth, segregation for ill. Y'all heard them words?
Mm-hmm.
What you didn't hear was Carl Sanders in Georgia saying, we will abide by the decision of the courts. That was the biggest lie that was ever told. Montgomery faded out of sight. Atlanta became the place where everybody decided that they needed to come down because it was Chocolate City and they would be safe. But I'm going to tell you, we have seen too many people go to prison. We done seen too many people on the chain gang. And one of them was Tunis Campbell. The greatest politician that we think our leader that ever existed in the United States of America. Frederick Douglass called him a traitor to his race. Douglass had run from the tyranny of slavery into the welcoming arm and bosom of abolitionists in Massachusetts. He was safe. Tunis Campbell, trained by the Episcopal Church in Brooklyn, came from freedom out of Middlebrook, New Jersey, into the tyranny of slavery and ended up being a person who was a supervisor of 5 of the out islands. Ossabaw, I forget the Charleston, I think, Sapelo, Cumberland, and the holy place, St. Catharines, which is off the coast of Liberty County. It was the northernmost possession of the Spanish in North America. This is why the boy was bad. He was bad because he understood what politics meant. On St. Catharines, by the way, sad to say, it's a gated community now. If you trace the history of your folk, you will find that land loss is an exceptional part of the tyranny of the politicians. Anyway, they decided to evict him off of St. Catharines because he had a 300-man militia there. Negroes weren't supposed to own no guns now, y'all. Huh? Y'all in here talking about how great the Second Amendment is. But the Second Amendment didn't apply to us. Well, it applied to my daddy. Some of us understand that it is perfectly all right to have protection. Not murder, but protection. 300-man army. He had a Senate on that island. House of Representatives on that island. He had a justice system, a justice system, a justice system, a justice system, not a criminal system on that island. And he was the leader. The federal government did what it always does. We got to get that boy off of that. So they formed a black regiment to evict him off of St. Catherine's. He moved into McIntosh County, just above Ridgeville into Belleville, and bought 1,250 acres. The importance of land in freedom is the most important thing that anybody can think of, and if you think that if you ain't got no land, you can live up in the high rises in New York City, and you're going to be safe, you're going to be ghettoized and put in the place of being what we are right now, shooting each other all over Chicago and having to have Cabrini Green blown to pieces because you cannot take and socialize people and believe that what happens is they are not going to be finding themselves in an oppressed position, and that oppressed position comes out with the kind of tyranny that's going on in our community now. Especially if you ain't got organized labor. They evicted him off the island. He became the justice of the peace in McIntosh County. But that was his downfall. Because being the justice of the peace, he made a decision that he didn't care who oppressed or abused the black race coming out of slavery, he put them in jail. He had brought from Middlebrook, New Jersey, his kinfolk to be the Superior Court clerk in McIntosh County. Guess who turned on him? Just like with Emmett Till, his cousins went back and say, for 50 cents worth of candy, we will tell you what Emmett did yesterday. Now, it might be something I'm just making up, but y'all look like y'all like it. The reason I say that is Jet Magazine carried that. Ebony Magazine carried that. Chicago Defender, started by a man born and raised in Glenn County, carried that. They went and said, for 50 cents worth of candy, we'll tell you what Emmett did. The greatest problem we got in terms of organizing is this. It's in the 26th chapter of Matthew, the 21st verse, verily, verily, I say unto you, one of you shall betray me. That's what happened to Tunis. He assisted the government in seeing to it that Tunis was brutalized and put in chain gang. But before that, and I'm finishing now, before that, he was senator in 3 major counties: McIntosh, Liberté, and this one, Tatnall. They had to form a black regiment to evict him off that island. That's what y'all gonna have to do to keep the Tunis Campbell Septima Clark Freedom School from fighting for the liberty of every human being that lives. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Our next presenter will be President Chester Dunham, speaking on the organized labor movement and impact of A. Philip Randolph. Thank you.
Chester is a bad man, y'all.
Amen.
All right.
Good afternoon. And I don't know why they got me following Zach. Zach is awesome. As you all know, you're just seeing a little bit of Zach. But Zach is awesome.
Thank you, Chad.
My situation here with the Live family goes way back. So we've been connected for a long time. When Zach told me about this program, I was telling him, I was trying to talk myself out of it. And then Zach said, no, you got to be involved. So briefly, I'm going to go through some things. My wife tells me I do a better job when I just talk. And I've got some things to read a little bit. But let's move into this situation here. I am Chester Dunham, and I am the president of the local A. Philip Randolph Institute chapter in Savannah, Georgia, and also hosts a television talk show. But I want to say that labor and civil rights are tied in together. Let me tell you a little bit about labor. And you have people on television, you look in the newspaper, everywhere. And number one, it is the American Federation of Labor Congress of Industrial Organization, AFL-CIO. That's labor as a whole. That's big labor. That's labor who they recognize in D.C. That is the group of organization that speaks, whether you're union or not, speaks for everybody who really works for a living. With that group, we have 51 state federations, meaning that in every state in the United States, we have a state fed. Then we have what we call a Central Labor Council. We have over 500 Central Labor Council and thousands of affiliates that connected with that union, which bring us to the total of 11 million plus members. A. Philip Randolph, that's a constituents organization. In other words, they endorse candidates, they do everything. Now they have 6 constituent groups. A. Philip Randolph is one of them. The constituent groups is non-partisan. Remember, labor partisan, the institute, just like the NAACP and all of these are non-partisan. But they are powerful educational tools that try to educate people on issues and all of these other things. So if you listen to them thoroughly, when you get ready to go to vote, you would make no mistake, because they in and out tell you about the facts of all politicians and how they vote and all of this sort of stuff. So that's that portion of this. Now let's go a little further to President Lincoln. Let's talk about labor. President Lincoln said this. He said, all that serve labor serve the nation. If a man tell you he love America, yet he hates labor, he is a liar. There is no America without labor. Zach just said a few minutes ago was talking about labor and what slaves that we dealt to build this country. Now these were oligarchs. Woodrow Wilson said this. He said, while we are fighting for freedom, we must see, among other things, that labor is free.
Amen.
Now, those are, President talked about labor. Now let's talk a little bit about organized labor.
All right now.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, if I was a worker in a factory, the first thing I would do would to join a union.
Amen.
President Eisenhower said, only a fool would try to deprive a working men and women of their right to join unions.
Yeah.
These are people who understood the importance of unions and organized labor. Let us look at what labor have given us. Talking about organized labor now. It's given us the collective bargaining law, which is we call the Norris-LaGuardia Act of 1932. From that act, it gives us the National Labor Relations Act, the National Labor Relations Board, the Wagner Act, Legal Services, the Railway Act, the Taft-Hartley Act, the Labor Management and Disclosure Act of 1959, labor management relation in the federal, state, and local services, postal workers, wages, hours, remember now, wages and hours and working conditions standard. Because one time long ago we didn't have none of that. But it was the pressure of organized labor that did all of these things and many other things that labor contributes, and many more that we are dealing with today. Now let us talk about a great man,
Deal with it.
which a lot of folks really don't understand or know about. We know about the history of Dr. King,
That's right.
who was great. The situation here is that even young or old, we still know about Dr. King and his contribution and what he contributed. But it was a forerunner, it was a person way ahead of Dr. King, which brought Dr. King on the scene. That man was A. Philip Randolph.
Absolutely.
A. Philip Randolph was the greatest black labor leader in American history and the father of the modern day civil rights movement.
That's right.
Mr. Randolph was not a Pullman, but he organized the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. And he took them from, it was 1925 to 1935, 10 years to organize the Pullman, and 2 years to negotiate a contract, 12 years in all. When the Pullman Company, the richest company in the United States, said it was not going to happen, it would never happen that they would sit down and bargain with black, with Pullman pullers. Now that sounds strange, but today, white people, black people, Asian, I don't care who you are, gets the devil right now trying to negotiate or organize today. That's why I try to tell my white brothers and all a lot of time, labor was that vehicle that speak for working people and still is that voice that's speaking for working people. But let's look at the situation here where we have racism as a fact everywhere, even in the labor movement. Today, and we do a lot of things, but we still have a lot of racism and racist problem and situation within the labor movement. A. Philip Randolph came on the scene and understood, and he broke the situation because at that time, white, which was the AFL-CIO, American Federation of Labor, CIO, Congress of Industrial Organization, two federations that eventually merged, but at one time they were separate. They segregated against each other. The American Federation thought that we were skilled, had more skill in all the other things, so we were head and shoulder above the other average little worker. I tell white folks this all the time. Congress of Industrial were just regular working people, so we degrade them. So you had racism everywhere. So when A. Philip Randolph came on the scene, I remember after Randolph organized the Pullman, it gave him a lot of clout, it gave him a lot of power. People started, because now he is the head of a national organization. He looked at the situation and said that we are fighting a war. Now remember, Randolph years ago, even with Woodrow Wilson in World War I. And that's another story that argued against it, went to jail before they went to fight in that war, because he said when they come back home to be treated as, they would be the people over there would be treated better than they were, because they had downgraded us and belittled us and all these other kind of things. So what happened is World War II. Randolph believed in World War II, but the situation where blacks could not receive a job in no plant. They were making planes, ships, tanks, everything. Blacks, the door were closed to them. Couldn't get a job. He threatened to march on Washington in 1941. After he threatened to march on Washington, when the president, who was President Roosevelt, knew that he was serious, then he sent his wife, who was afraid of Randolph, to go to New York to speak with Randolph. But the bottom line is he brought him in. Randolph came in with a small group with the president of the NAACP and 2 or 3 of them, and they sat down and talked with the president. And he was trying to get him to call the march off. This is 1941. And Randolph told him the problem was that blacks were discriminated against. They couldn't get jobs in the defense plant. And Roosevelt called in other people, the president of over the labor and all of these other things. But the bottom line is he was trying to get Randolph to call the march off. And Randolph told him that I cannot do it. He said, the people will think that I'm not betrayed them. He said, no, we will not do, I would not do that. And from that conversation, they left, shook hands and they left. And when Roosevelt knew that he was serious, Roosevelt called, sent him back for Randolph. Randolph came back to Washington, and he signed an Executive Order 8802, which is on the record book today, dealing with people in the defense industry all over the United States, about meaning now with that executive order, if you refuse these people, now they can take you to court and do all of these other kind of things. That was the first one. 48, our black soldier, individual were going into war, and it was discrimination in the war. He got a lot of complaints, and he moved forward about doing things. So what he did then was challenge President Truman, the Senate at that time, and eventually Truman finally signed another executive order, which it was 9981, I think it was. But anyway, that executive order meaning that as of now, all service, all branches of the service, the military, everything else are integrated. And you know you might have a certain situation where we have to take people to court, but on the law book, that's that executive order. So he did that with 2 presidents. In the 50s, he led 3 marches to Washington about jobs, about justice and all of these things. Now, here was a situation that in 1955, a seamstress, Miss Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat this particular day on the bus. Days before, she had given up had got up off the bus, but this day she just refused. From this happening, she was placed in jail. How to tie it in, bringing Dr. King on the scene and Randolph. What happened is the history of this movement. We didn't know anything about, the people during that time didn't know anything about Dr. King. They knew that he was a preacher. He had just finished in D.C. School in Boston and came to Montgomery. And eventually they hired him as their new preacher. Wasn't been there 2 or 3 weeks. As he serviced the church for about 3 or 4 months, but now they hired him as their new minister. What happened is that Ms. Park got put in jail. Phone call went out to A. Philip Randolph, not Dr. Randolph, but to E.D. Nixon, who was the president of the NAACP and a Pullman poet, and also the chairman of the deacon board of the church where Dr. King was called to preach. That's how this movement started. They decided then, the women's auxiliary in that little town decided they were going to talk about boycotting the buses. And that's what they had a meeting. The first meeting they had, the second meeting, Mr. Nixon went to Mr. Randolph. I mean, not Randolph, but Dr. King, and asked him what they were planning on doing, and asked him would he come to a particular meeting that they were planning. And Dr. King said, Mr. Nixon said, you know, I don't know nothing about the movement, I don't know nothing about this and that. He said, I'm young and I'm new here. He said, that's one of the main reasons why we want you, because you're new and you have all of these other things. But eventually, they got all of the leaders in that area, and eventually Dr. King decided to meet with them. And in that meeting, that's how Dr. King got started in the movement. Now, the situation here is that all of these things happen. Now, they decide then, President Kennedy was the president, and he would put together a civil rights bill. You know, wasn't too much to it, but he was trying to do something because of situations happening in the South. What triggered the whole thing was in Birmingham, with the 4 little kids, children got with the church bomb. Again, Randolph was trying to tell the leaders about another march. Eventually, Randolph called in 5 organizations, NAACP, well, SCLC wasn't SCLC at that time, but it was Dr. King, Mr. Randolph, Irvin Lee, and those, and young John Lewis, and those called them in a meeting. They went to Washington, sit down with President Kennedy. President Kennedy was trying to talk them out of it because he said he had this civil rights bill he was trying to get passed, and he needed the Southern votes and all of those sort of things. But the long story here is that they couldn't do anything with them, and President Kennedy said, well, I wish you all good luck and all of this sort of stuff. So they had this march. This is the day. This was the march, 1963. They had people from all organizations, different colors, different groups, decided to come together as one. They decided then that they will have this program. Now, we know about Dr. King and the I Have a Dream speech, which was, we all know, that was the speech. But Dr. King was an orator plus a minister, and tied all of this in together like Zach was doing not too long ago. You could tell the minister was preaching part of it. Randolph was one of the greatest orators that during that modern time. So what happened is there was 10 speakers. We only talked about one. The first speaker was Martin Luther King, and the last was Dr. King. A. Philip Randolph. I'm going to just say this, and I'm going to sit down with a little bit of Randolph's speech. And Randolph's speech went like this. He said, we are gathered here today in the greatest demonstration in the history of this nation. He said, let the world know the meaning of our numbers. We are not a mob. We are not a pressure group. But we are the advanced guard of a massive moral revolution for jobs and freedom. He said, and this revolution reverberates throughout the land, touching every town, every village, every hamlet where blacks are segregated against. And at the end of his speech, he said, but we'll be back again and again, and even greatest numbers, until total freedom is ours. That's mostly what happened, and we are still battling and fighting these things today with the movement of the civil rights struggle. That's what I wanted to let y'all know. Oh yes, and then right now, this week, I know a lot of y'all heard it, next week, we will be in Memphis, Tennessee, celebrating the 50th anniversary during the time when Dr. King was assassinated. That's what happened. And Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, protecting and fighting for the sanitation workers, people who work for a living. That's when he gave up his life. But the key thing about this thing about Dr. King is Dr. King, the day before he died, I have to say this, just before then, he got on the plane. I know y'all have heard this, but the public, the captain came on the system and said that we are sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King aboard the plane, and we wanted to make sure that we guard this plane all night. We checked, and we did everything to protect his life because we heard about a threat on his life and all of these other things going to be happening. And Dr. King, that next morning, that next night, he was supposed to speak, but he was feeling bad. He had a cold. He was feeling bad. He didn't want to speak. He was telling the people that he was sending Reverend Abernathy in this place because he was feeling bad, but they wanted to hear Dr. King. Dr. King came that night to speak. And he said that like everybody else, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. He said, but I'm not concerned about that now. He said, all I want to do is do God's will, and he had allowed me to go up to the mountaintop. He said, and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but you as a people will get to the promised land. And that was the end of the speech that Dr. King did before. The next day, or what have you, was the next afternoon, he was assassinated. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, we want you to know that we organized this because we are definitely set on making sure we organize every hamlet, every village, every church, every commode for the election of Stacey Abrams. And there's a young man that just walked in. He got more power than presidents. From Florida. He's one of the greatest organizers I've ever met, Brother Coward. And so what we know is when that kind of person walks in our midst, the goals that we want to make sure that this is organized so Stacey can become the first governor of this particular state that's African, we are grateful for you being here.
Thank you, President Dunham. Our next speaker will be Pastor Emeritus William Bill Phillips, speaking on experience, demonstration, determination, and success.
Dr. Leonard Small?
He'll be here. Oh, he's on his way. He had a funeral.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not Dr. Leonard Small. Y'all need to get up and stretch for a minute.
Yes.
Everybody stand up.
Thank you, Bill. That's what an experienced Baptist preacher will do for you.
Not Baptist, Methodist.
Oh, Methodist.
The bathroom is right through that back door back there, too. Anybody needs to go to the bathroom. Okay? Great. As I tell my people at the Unitarian Universalist Church in coastal Georgia, if anybody gets really angry and needs to leave while I'm talking, that's the door right there.
Don't run these people out, Bill.
I particularly want to thank Mr. Dunham for his talk.
Amen.
Because you almost read my mind about what I'm going to talk about. I followed right on your heels. And like you said at the beginning, you follow Zach Line. There's no way to be ahead of him. You got to follow him. He was telling me about this meeting, and he was explaining it to me. I'd heard of Tunis Campbell. And I said, well, how many white people going to be there, Zach? He said, well, it depends on whether your wife is coming or not. I said, she's here. She's here. I said, I don't want to be completely alone. He said, you better bring her.
Amen.
In 1961, by the way, I'll be 80 next month.
All right.
In 1961, I was a second-year theology student at Emory University in Atlanta. I was 21 years old. I had just married this lady here who was 18 years old. And there were 5 theology schools in Atlanta, Georgia at that time. There was a Baptist seminary at at Morehouse College. There was a Methodist seminary at Gammon College, and there was a third Christian seminary, and I don't remember which school it was. But there were those 3, and then there was the Methodist Theology School at Emory, and there was a Presbyterian Theology School in Decatur, Georgia. At that time, none of the students from any of those theology schools had ever gotten together, even in a room like this. So, some of us students got together and elected, each one of us, a representative to begin what we call the Interdenominational Theological Forum. I was elected from Emory. So we met together, 5 of us, and planned our first meeting. First meeting was at Morehouse Chapel. Somebody said, well, who shall we get to be our speaker? It's real important. Well, we asked this new, brash, 29-year-old preacher from Morehouse, but who had gone to Boston University to get his PhD degree, and had just come back from India, where he went to have a conference with Gandhi. And we invited Dr. King, who was then the associate minister. His daddy was the leader of Ebenezer Baptist Church downtown Atlanta. So we asked Dr. King, would he come and be our first speaker? We thought that would draw a big crowd. Well, there were about half as many people came, this is the truth, to the chapel that night. I still remember it was a rainy February night, and about half this crowd came. There were approximately 6 or 8 students from each one of the different seminaries. There was 1 representative and 1 faculty member. So we had 5 faculty members, about 30 students to hear Dr. King speak. But this was 2001. I wish it was 2000. This was 1961. So Dr. King spoke mainly about his meetings with Gandhi and about the new phrase non-violent resistance, which none of us had heard anything about. He got all through and asked for questions. And the first question was from an elderly, deep-throated African-American minister who was in the balcony. He wasn't even in the crowd with us. And he said, Martin, you spoke for 45 minutes and you haven't mentioned Jesus Christ once. And Martin said, Dad. True story. He said, Dad, I was asked to speak about my meetings with Mahatma Gandhi. His father said, Gandhi will be long dead and gone, and Jesus will still be remembered. Don't you ever forget that, boy. I had no idea who was talking, but it was his daddy. So now, don't interrupt me, Zach.
I won't do that, sir.
That was my first meeting with him. And then some of us asked him later, after the meeting, what can we do to follow up on it? What can we do? Do you want us to get theology students to go downtown to sit in at the lunch counter? Do you want some of us to go and sit in at First Baptist Church in Atlanta? And he thought about it quite seriously. And he finally said, what I really think would be important would be if you guys, because there were no women theology students in those days. He said, if you guys who are married would get together and form a couples group with you and your spouses, and if any of you have children, bring them. He said, what we're going to need are some people who know each other long after you've left school, but you know each other as people. You know each other as families. And we said, well, where do we start with that? He said, if you want to come to Ebenezer Church once a month for the school year, that would be 8 months. If you want to come together as couples, bring your children if you have them. Most of us didn't have children. We will meet once a month as a group and get to know each other. About where we came from, who we are, what we're doing here. So we did that. We had a group of 6 couples, including Martin, including his wife, including me, my wife, and we met together. Coretta was pregnant with Dexter at that point. Dexter must be 50-something years old now. But she was pregnant with Dexter. And we met together as people. It wasn't a clergy group. It was a couples group for black and white people. I never will forget that first week. Dr. King let everybody go around the room, tell their name, where they came from. I was and still am from Birmingham, Alabama. I'm not of Birmingham. I'm from there. That's where I grew up. But anyway, we met together, and he asked, who has the first question? A young 20-something-year-old, married black student from Morehouse stood up and said, Dr. King, let me see if I heard you right about this nonviolent resistance movement. If tomorrow me and my wife are on the city bus in Atlanta, Georgia, going downtown to go shopping, and some white honky gets up and spits on her, are you telling me not to knock the crap out of him? Well, now keep this in mind. Dr. King at this time was 29 years old. 29. Think about that. And he thought about that question and he said, no, I'm not telling you you cannot get up and knock the crap out of that guy. I understand it completely. My wife's pregnant here. I wouldn't put up with it. He said, I am telling you this. If you do that, you cannot be on my team. I'm developing a team of people who are going to successfully resist this segregation business. But we're not going to do it with guns. We're not going to do it with fists. We're going to do it with non-violent resistance. Because this nation needs to know about not responding with violence to violence. Now that was when he was 29 years old. I was 21. We all thought we were old, wise people. But Martin Luther King Jr. was the only wise person in the group at that time. So we met together during that next year, and some of us kept relationships for several more years during the civil rights movement. And some of us didn't. Now that's my first story.
Will Smith's rendition of DC's Deadshot and Suicide Squad has put the star back on the Hollywood map. Now the actor has movies to boot lined up, including new DC movies, a Netflix original film, a possible role as the genie in Disney's Aladdin, and the new Bad Boys sequel. On top of all this, THR has announced that Will Smith may be up for the starring role in the upcoming Ang Lee film, The Gemini Man. The story features an aging assassin who tried to get out of the business but finds himself in the ultimate battle, fighting his own clone who's 25 years younger than him and at the peak of his abilities. In the meantime, fans can't wait to see Smith in Bright, which premieres on Netflix this December.
It's all right, my brother.
Now I want to move forward from 61 to 1987. In 1987, the United States Congress voted to establish the Martin Luther King birthday, the King holiday. They endorsed that and voted on it in March of 87. In 1987, Nan and I and our children were living in Forsyth County, Georgia. The reason we were in Forsyth County, Georgia was we had been living in Atlanta for almost 30 years at that point. We wanted a break from the city to move out of way. We moved to Lake Lanier. We didn't know that Lake Lanier was in Forsyth County. And having been from Birmingham and Alabama, I assure you, if I had known Forsyth County was on the shore, that Lake Lanier was on the shores of Forsyth County, we probably wouldn't have moved there, but we did. So, the Congress voted for the King holiday. That was in March. Martin's birthday came around the next February, 1988. No, I got that wrong, but 86 they voted it, and it came around in 87. So, there were a group of African-American ministers in Gainesville, Georgia, the next county and town over. There were about 5 African-American clergy. There were 2 white clergy and one guy who ran a exercise salon. He became the leader. And so we decided we would celebrate the King holiday in Forsyth County, Georgia by walking 1 mile into Cumming. The courthouse was in Cumming. It was the capital of Forsyth County. Now, Forsyth County, for those of you who haven't read Blood at the Root,
Well, good. His son wrote it.
That's my son's book. Forsyth County had been all white since 1912. In 1912, they hung 2 young African-American men for a trumped-up charge of rape. They never went to trial. There are pictures of them being hung from telephone poles right behind the courthouse. That was 1912. They then burned out all the African-American families. It was a racial cleansing in the midst of the United States of America. They ran all the African Americans out. They stole their land. They stole their property. And never again was there an African American family who lived in Forsyth County. So here comes the first King holiday. And so 8 of us, my wife and I, our daughter, 5 people from the county, but really from Gainesville next door, and Hosea Williams. We called Hosea. Hosea was kind of like Zach. He loved the march. And he loved to get young people. He brought a busload of students from Atlanta University up there on a bus, one bus. So, our daughter was home from her first year in college, American University in D.C. She was a history major. So she saw in the local paper there's going to be what, it wasn't called a march then, what was going to be the Brotherhood Walk to celebrate the King holiday, the first one. Well, she said, Dad, see, I was experienced. I'd been in Alabama. I'd seen buses burned. I fought the Klan there. She said, do you think there'll be any problem? I said, daughter, this is 1987. There won't be any problem this time. So she said, well, can we go? I said, sure, we're going. It was on Saturday morning. We were supposed to meet at a place at 10 o'clock. Well, we got in our car and drove down to the intersection where we were supposed to get off the expressway. We drove up the ramp, and I'm telling you, there were cars, pickup trucks, everywhere, all over this intersection. Because it was in a rural section, and it was exactly 1 mile to the county courthouse. And I said to Nan and to my daughter, this is fantastic. I cannot believe this many people came to this Brotherhood Walk in Forsyth County, Georgia. This is great. Well, Nan had worked for the Gainesville Times newspaper. She knew the county police chief in the county. He was out in the middle of the road directing traffic. She went up and said, Wesley, where should we park our car and where are the people? He said, man, wait a minute, what are you doing here? I can't talk to you, you're from the press. She said, no, I used to be from the press. I quit that job the first of the year. It was January. He said, well, what are you doing here? She said, well, we're here for the walk, for the Brotherhood Walk. To which he put his hands on his head. He said, oh my God. He said, see that couple over there? He said, I'm not going to point at them so to identify them, that couple over there. And she said, you mean that white couple? She said, yes. He said, you and your daughter and your husband and that white couple are the only people here so far on your side. There's 2,000 people here, and there's 2,000 people at the courthouse. And some of them have nooses, some of them have bats, and some have guns. Please don't do this. We said, well, we're going to go over and talk to these people. He said, well, don't distinguish yourself. So I said, well, when are the buses coming in Atlanta? He said, what buses? Hosea kind of forgot the number. So anyway, we stand and wait. In a little while, a bus comes. Hosea Williams gets off. Billy McKinney gets off. Billy's daughter, who was the one singing for us. And he had 30 students. And so those 30 and the 6 or 8 of us get in line 2 by 2, and we start to head toward the courthouse. but we took a route they didn't expect. They thought we were going this way and we went that way. Well, the Klan people had horses, they had bottles, they had saved up bricks and rocks, and they started throwing them at our okay? Our daughter got chipped, she didn't get blasted with one, but she got hit. And finally, they tell us to get on the bus. We all get on the bus. And then Billy McKinney, Hosea Williams, and our police chief, who was a good guy, by the way, and the head of the GBI, who we did not know was there, who was also a white guy, said, we need to meet right here in the middle of the bus and we need to decide what we're going to do. The chief of police said, listen, there are people worse than this in town. I'm asking you, do not do this. If you have to do it, it's your privilege. It's the law is on your side. I will lead you in there with a helmet, a nightstick, and a rifle. Because I'm going to protect you if I can. But I don't think we can. Would you please come back? And Billy McKinney and Hosea Williams said, we'll come back next Saturday. He said, no, we want you to come back in a month. We'll have the Georgia state troopers here. We'll have the GBI. We'll have everybody. Well, thank goodness. But it scared me. Billy McKinney and Hosea Williams said, no, sir, we'll come back next Saturday. Well, they had an agreement. They did. The next Saturday, there was the GBI, there was the State Patrol, there was the FBI, there was the local county police, there was police from Atlanta, and there was people in helicopters that were for the GBI protecting the roadway. And guess what? How many people would you say? 4,000. 4,000? Somebody will guess higher or lower?
Lower. 10,000.
Who?
It was higher.
Lower.
22,000 people.
Whoa!
That was on TV.
That went on television all over the
Yeah.
world. 22,000 people. Dan and I spent all week calling clergy I knew in Atlanta because we kept telling them we do not want this to be an African American march.
You're all right with me, Bill.
So now I'm going to end this very briefly. The county commissioners were there. It was called the Welcoming Committee. I swear it was. It was called the Welcoming Committee. Well, they welcomed Loretta Scott King, Andy Young, and so forth, all down the line. Dick Gregory came from France. He did. Dick Gregory was there. The next week after that is when OPRAH had her first public interview ever to go into a local community and gather people together. She had never done that before. She did that. Okay, wrapping it up. A year later, the Southern Poverty Law Center had an article, a little box article, in the Gainesville Times, which Dan used to work for, that said, would anyone who lives in Forsyth County be willing to come and talk to us about a project we have? Dan, of course, saw it and said, well, let's go meet with them Saturday afternoon. So we go and meet with them. And the project was that they were going to have a class action suit against the KKK of Georgia, North Carolina, and Alabama. Unbeknownst to us, they had tapped the phone lines. And they wanted to prove that this was a coalesced agreement by all these three Klan groups. And it was the first time they wanted to convict the Klansmen individually. That you don't mind being a Klansman, that you two guys are individually responsible, not just the Klan in general. The case lasted a week. But the thing you need to know is when we went down and talked to Morris Dees and his assistant lawyer about testifying, we found out we were the only two white people from Forsyth County willing to testify. They weren't before us anyway. So we were the only two who came in. So I'm used to being one of the only two. Don't bother me at all. So we go down and they interview both of us separately. Because they want to find who will be the best witness. Well, I was at that time a Methodist minister. Nan was retired, a teacher. Who do you think they guessed to be the best witness?
Nan.
Yeah, no. They said you're a little too boisterous, you're too angry. She can handle it better. So she testified for a week, 2 different days out of that week against the Klan. The Southern Poverty Law Center moved us downtown in a hotel room because they were afraid they would burn our house down. They never burned our house down. Nan testified we won $1.5 million suit against the Klan.
Money.
But the other thing, we didn't get $1.5 million. We got, the claimants got $350. Most of us donated it back to the Southern Poverty Law Center for taking our case forward. But the other thing is we learned something. The Klan was ordered, I've never been in federal court. This was federal court. The Klan was ordered after the first day, you will tomorrow come in suit and tie. If you don't have a coat, we've got a coat room full back here, and we will give you one. And you will not interrupt, or you will be put in jail for disturbing this trial. So, then afterwards, when they came down with this suit, Morris Dees of the Southern Poverty Law Center walked out with us on the courthouse step. One of the Klansmen from Forsyth County confronted us and started cursing Morris Dees, who just stood there and looked at him. And he took a breath and he said, "Now, brother, if you open your mouth for another word, I'm going right back in that courtroom and have you put in prison tonight, for threatening me." And you need to know that a judgment against an individual person goes on for as long as it takes. We know you don't have $1.5 million, but sooner or later I'm going to get you both a pickup truck and a shotgun. So what we learned out of it, believe me, these people are cowards.
Oh.
They showed up with suits and ties. They said yes sir and no sir. And when it was over, this one fool Klansman was the only person we ever heard from. Nobody ever called us, nobody ever sent us a threatening letter, but it was partly because of that judge. So, that's my story for now. I got a lot more, but I'm not going to tell them today.
Can I say something right quick?
Yeah.
I'm not on the program. I want to shake this man's hand. The reason why I was sophomore class president in Morris Brown. I was a photographer. I was the last person to leave Forsyth County on that 2nd March. I ran for my life.
Whoa!
Oh, yes.
Whoa!
I was taking pictures. We thought the trucks was coming one way to pick me up and scoop me up. When I looked, trying to get the shots, everybody pulling off. The photographer with the video camera got on the bus. I did. The guy who was just out of Chatham County sheriff or over the jail was the G.B.R. person who was the glove man for Hosea Williams. And Hosea Williams invited me. And the one thing that Mr. Williams taught me, if you want something to move, you got to have young people. Everybody here got a niece, granddaughter, cousin, somebody that we needed to brought here to hear this, because just like Mr. Dunham was saying on his way up, and this gentleman right here organizing youth labor together. We're not doing that.
Right.
Once you hear this, a young person, it's in you. I have never stopped. Because I never forgot how, talking about, I almost left my $300 camera. That was a lot back then. It fell, I doubled back, and I kept going. And the Georgia State Patrolman saw me running. I could see the people on the street over with the truck. They were yelling things. I yelled till my voice dropped. And that was the longest and the shortest ride back to Fulton County. I walked from Marietta Chicken to Sundays as far as I could take. I'm telling you, it's a life-changing experience. I was time traveling when this film was started. All the people, Dan King, Hosea, James Orange, Jesse, Andy Young, David Franklin, Cheryl Frank. These are people I met when I come to meet folks like these folks here and everybody else. This is why I'm still in it. Education is the key, but you got to bring young people. They got to hear these stories so they can ruminate. Get them off the phone. I would have jumped up in this service for work. But it's a life changer for me. I know my purpose now. Seriously.
All right.
These people give their whole life at risk. They got a different skin color than us. If we can't step up and do something, I'm a biology major. When you peel all the dermis, we're all the same.
I want to tell you one other thing now. When the G.B.R. guy said, turn this bus around, we're going to get you guys back to Atlanta.
Right.
I held up my hand, and he and the sheriff said, what is it? And I said, we live here. I ain't going back to Atlanta. And they said, oh, both of them said, oh my God, we forgot about it. I said, how are we going to get home? The GBI guy said, get in my car, take off your hat, take off your coat, because that's how they will identify you.
Right.
Bill, you lay on the floor, man, you lay on the seat, and daughter, you stand up, but take your hat off.
Right.
And they took us right back home, because the reason they took us home in that police car, I had parked right beside the Klan. Remember there was a Klan truck with all that.
Right. Graffiti and everything.
I parked right beside it.
Right.
Good to see you. Good to see you again.
Two things, and they have given us some things that we need to do.
Okay.
Amen.
We need to take everybody's name, phone number, and we need to get your email so that what we can do for the purpose of our being here is to organize every hamlet and village to work on behalf of the governorship of Stacey Abrams. One other thing is I want to say Jerome Urban is one of them bad Negroes with the Teamsters. We brought him in here because we want folk to know we ain't playing no games in terms of this organizing thing. So give him a stand up, just say that now, this is a powerful man. God bless you and thank you.
Less than 30 seconds. I want to commend you too. I've been dealing in civil rights since 1975. I'm a retired military person. And we have had a lot of white people. A lot of them. I mean, a lot of them. More than two, a lot of them. They start out on this journey with us. They surround us. But give them a day, a week, a month, or a decade, they're gone.
Well,
but you've proven that you are not only a great American, but a white right person. That's what we call the whites who stay committed to the cause of what Jesus talked about. We call you a white right person. You have proven that to us.
Go ahead on,
Why are you carrying the cross? What statement you trying to make today, brother?
Trying to lift up our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Okay, it's a time to do it.
Yes, sir, during Easter when he went to the cross, did his precious blood for us.
Okay. Are you a pastor or you just doing the committed?
Yes, just a lover of Jesus.
All right, thank you, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Peace be unto you all.
This is my first day of shooting on the movie It's called Gemini Man. We're shooting in Georgia. I love Georgia. But y'all gotta do something about the bugs. Georgia's so gorgeous. No, it really is. It's beautiful. But you gotta rock this to be out here. All right? So I'm just saying y'all need to fix it. Cause I sprayed off on. The bugs is on that like it's honey. I make my living with my face. So somebody do something about it. Quick.
And Liam Will Smith start filming Gemini Man. Will Smith has revealed on his Instagram that filming has started for the Paramount Pictures and Scotland's movie Gemini Man, coming to theaters on October 4, 2019. Gemini Man is an innovative action thriller starring Will Smith as Henry Brogan, an elite assassin, who is suddenly targeted and pursued by a mysterious young operative that seemingly can predict his every move. The film is directed by Academy Award-winning filmmaker Ang Lee and produced by renowned producers Jerry Bruckheimer and David Allison. Also starring are Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Clive Owen and Benedict Wong. Are you looking forward to seeing Gemini Man? Let us know in the comments below.
You mess around and put me up there, no. I see that's why they're moving that right there. When they get through that right there, they can get out to me. I'll put it in my yard where it be in the woods. It'll get hung up in the tree. Three.
This is the Get To Free Press, and we report what others ignore. This is your First Amendment right to know without whiteouts from a controlled news media whiteout network. And we are located in Valdosta, Georgia, and we are here to inform, educate, and persuade if necessary. Always keep that in mind. Moreover, I want to say to you that as a community, state, nation, and world, we are not who we claim to be, but who we prove ourselves to be over a given period of time. And if we are a liar, time will tell. And if we are a racist or a hater, time will tell. And our righteous and holy God already know. So you are only fooling yourselves. Again, the Ghetto Free Press. I'm George Foster Ryan.